Since the signing of the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement by Nigeria, economists and critics have constantly asked what Nigeria's economy stands to benefit from this agreement. That's a big question.
Well, the agreement, which seeks to establish a single continental market for goods and services with free movement of business professionals and investments, will also accelerate the establishment of the Continental Customs Union and the African Customs Union.
Joining us now is Mr. Bamidele Ayemibo, former chairman of Exports Group, Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and he shall be reviewing the Africa Continental Free Trade Area Agreement amid Nigeria's economy. Welcome to the morning show, sir.
Good morning.
So let's get straight into it now. This is the world's largest free trade area, you know, consisting of 53 countries, Nigeria being the 53rd country to sign. We have 1.2 billion people in this ecosystem. You know, amidst the signing of this, we've had different reactions, some of them good, some of them bad. You know, even the Buhari administration hesitated for a bit before they went ahead to sign. What's your take away from this? Do you think this is a good thing at the right time?
I think it's the best thing that happened to the African continent. And the reason is because up until now, we trade with Asia, we trade with Europe, trade with America, and the people we are trading with do a lot of trade among themselves. So you mentioned 1.2 billion in Africa. We have just about 500 million in the EU. With 500 million people, we have over 30% of trade done among them, and 70% of that is within them. So they contribute 30% of world trade, but 70% is within themselves, and they're just about 500 million people. So what we say about 1.2 billion people that's having just contributing 2.5% of the world trade and just 18% among themselves. So with the agreement being done, breaking down all the barriers we have among ourselves, we're going to be able to increase trade among ourselves. And that's the only way to reduce poverty. That means if I'm going to produce now, I'm not going to have most of the issues and barriers that European will put on my product because they have a higher standard. Ghanaian will take my product. Malawian will take my product. Other African countries will take my product. And if I grow that trade, I will create more jobs locally and we can lift our people out of poverty.
Let's talk about the bottlenecks, Dele. I mean, Dele, we're strong advocates for this. We campaign about it.
Yes.
We were writing articles, articles published on this day, and other media outlets as regards this. Finally, it's happened now. But a lot of people are talking about the bottlenecks. Take, for instance, the cross-border bottleneck. A lot of people say it's pretty much a hard border in Brexit terms all over Africa. To take something across, it's still problematic. Look at what we've done. We shut out the borders. This might continue because the government says it's getting gains from it. So what will you talk about the bottlenecks? How possible is it? Look at the fight going on with South Africans.
Now, the beauty of this agreement is that among most of the agreements you see around the world, this agreement have what is called a dispute resolution mechanism. So because this will start by July next year, trade should start on this agreement. Now, if this happens, it becomes easier for us to take Benin Republic and another country to that committee to fix the issues so that at the end of the day we can trade and we agree to the protocol we both, we abide by the protocol we both signed to agree and abide by. So what has happened in West Africa is that we have this protocol in West Africa, but many people have not been able to abide by it, and there's no resolution mechanism so that Nigeria can easily shut its borders. And I think it's good we are doing it now before this starts, because if we are doing this after the trading start around July next year, that will not be good for ACFTA because it's affecting export actually. Like you said, we're having gain on it. So I think it's good we're doing it now. Send the signal. But by the time we start the trading, it becomes easier for us to use those dispute resolution mechanisms to get every country that have signed this agreement to do what they need to do so that everybody can benefit.
Let's look at the barriers to cost-effective and competitive markets for the Nigerian economy when all of this starts. We're talking about constant power supply, motorable roads, working rails, the ports. Do you think that we have our strategic priority right at the moment?
You know, when we discuss this issue, I always want us to work with data.
Okay.
If you check the competitive index of Africa, Nigeria is, I think, just below about 10 or 11 in Africa. So we have about 53, 54 countries that have signed this agreement. So we're still better off than a number of other African countries. Fine, among the top 5 economy, we are below them in terms of competitiveness. But what is happening right now is majority of Nigerian products are being shipped to West Africa already, to other Africa already. So we're already shipping to those places. You know what happened in Africa is most African countries are not producing.
Including Nigeria? Are we producing?
You know, sometimes when we think of Nigeria, if you compare, which is good, we're not comparing Nigeria with Africa. If you compare other African countries, we are far, far, far ahead of a lot of African countries. Sure. In terms of production, we are way ahead of them. So we are producing enough to be able to sell to them.
Okay.
Now, if we, now with this agreement, we have, free trade area. I'm hoping we'll be able to move to customs union eventually, where we shut out all other people from us. But for now, we have free trade area that are allowed to trade freely among ourselves. Now, if Nigeria is already going into that market without free trade area, for example, look at ETLS. ETLS have this kind of agreement within West Africa. Nigeria is doing more than 40% of the trade in the whole of West Africa. I can understand that. Out of 350 million people, Nigeria is over 200 million. So I can understand where we're doing about 40. But that's an advantage already for us. Now, that means that all we need to do now is to take it beyond Africa beyond West Africa to other parts of Africa. And what that does for us is, if we're going to lift our people out of poverty, if over 90 million Nigeria in poverty, 90 million, China in the last 2010-2017 they lifted about 200 million people. So by next year, they want to eliminate poverty in China. Why is China able to do that? Trade, trade, trade. China will do everything from building rail across 7 countries, building bridges on ocean, just to be able to trade. And doing a lot to support their people locally. I think our conversation should be, what should government begin to do?
And that's why I asked about the strategic priorities. Do we have the strategic priorities right?
Now, what we need to begin to do now is to begin to put plans in place to get that done. Now, if you check most of the free trade area around the world, I realize that one of the major reasons why many countries do not get their businessmen to participate and enjoy the free trade agreement is because many of them are not even aware. So the delay we had and the fanfare afterward was a positive one in my opinion. Reason being that at least people are aware, but that awareness is not enough. We need to now begin to do, I was telling someone, I said, the kind of awareness that we have, you remember during the last election, in Lagos, it got to a point that a comedian was using the poster of the governor candidate to describe the road. And when you get to the junction, you see the poster, it was all over the place. Yeah. That's the way we have to do it. That every business person must be aware of ACFTA so that we can begin to now walk towards it. Yeah.
I want to talk to you about the fact that, I want to talk to you real quickly about the fact that when you look at the African continent now and the vast potentials there, a very strong problem is still a problem of terrorism and insecurity across the borders.
Yes.
When you open up borders for trade, insecurity too will come in.
Yes,
that's on the heels of the conversation they've been having at the Economic Summit group meetings in Abuja, and the fact that our population is prone to this type of danger. What should be the modus operandi is put in place as regards security?
Now, security thrive when...
All right, we'll quickly go on the break. We'll come back.
Welcome back to the Morning Show here on Arise News. We do sincerely apologize for the technical glitch that we encountered during the course of our interview here with Mr. Bamidele Ayemibo, former chairman of Export Group, Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Thank you so much for staying with us.
Thank you.
Technology does have its days.
Definitely. We're talking about security. I was talking about securing our borders, and the influx of insurgents and this once you open up the borders. They all come in, they say in the name of trade.
Yes. Now, and I was saying that to fix the issue of security, not just in Nigeria, in West Africa generally, we need to be able to tame trade-based money laundering. When the government came up with the idea of these charges on deposits, the target really is actually because of the illicit fund moving around, because funds that are used to fund those illicit trade and the terrorism are basically cash-based. And if you're able to eliminate significantly cash from your economy, you're going to be able to trace the movement of those funds. So what we must do in Nigeria and in Africa is to be able to find a way to effectively monitor trade-based money laundering. If we can trace the source of those funding and cut it off, we can significantly prevent what is happening in Nigeria. Because all these things are funded and they have, you should know that there's narrative around it. There are people beyond Boko Haram, the banditry, all of them have narrative there. So it's a script that some people are playing. So it's not just happening because, of course, it's leveraging on the unemployment in the society, no doubt about it. But there's scripts going on. So, and those things are being funded. And government can trace those funds only if they are done electronically.
I want to come in here and, I know you want to come in, Shaitan. I want to come in here and ask about how states can be part of AFCTA. Individual states. Sustainability of these states. I mean, yesterday at the Economics Summit Group meeting, yesterday it was established a fact that states are not sustainable. In fact, there's a talk in town about merging some states because some states, only about two-thirds of the states are sustainable. But we all know that this growth we look at is because the China we cite is because some provinces add to the trade. Shenzhen, for instance, focused on cars and some other provinces in China. How can Ogun State say, I will be exporting XYZ billion worth of goods?
You just nailed it.
How can Lagos State say, I will be exporting XYZ billion? And because even the Lagos we say has money, it's just receipts and tax receipts. So Lagos is not producing anything apart from tax receipts. It's just like London itself. How can these states be part of AFCTA?
Now, we've been doing something at the Academy in recent time, and basically what we found out.
Right. We'll quickly go. I'm sure they're going to have a conversation around this too at Nigeria Economic Summit. We'll come back to you and you answer that question.
All right.
Sunday was the Big Brother Nigeria finale. And we all know the total number of votes that were gathered in that show. About over 250 million people, 240 million people actually voted. I don't know if the figures are true, but Nigerians or young Nigerians, as the case may be, spent over 7-point-something billion on casting votes for people of their choice. But look back at our elections. We've got about 84 million registered voters. Only 51.1% are young people between 18 and 35. And what was the turnout for our elections? It was just for the presidential elections. It was 35.6%. For governorship elections, it was 32%. And that is so low and very, very poor. But what does that tell you? That you're getting a lot of young people who are not participating in the political process because, one, they probably don't believe that their votes count, and it is very, very complex to vote, to become a voter in Nigeria. And so it's important that we take the Big Brother Nigeria model and look at what is that actually telling us. It's telling us that we need to change the way we vote in our elections. We need to improve the level of trust because there is broken trust in the public space. And the third is our political parties. I think we've got very weak parties today who don't conduct primary elections that yield excellent leaders. Our primary elections today are either an auction for the highest bidder or they are signposted by violence and all forms of irregularity. We need to address that. Our political parties need to ensure that the candidates that they field for elections are candidates that understand what it takes to provide leadership. We're not there yet, but over the next 30 years, I tell you, there's a generation of young politicians that are rising that will disrupt this space because our political system needs a shock, and we're going to provide that shock.
So I hear participation and engagement. Mr. Chief.
Thank you very much. Good to be here this morning. And I'm very hopeful that many of the things we're going to talk about today and that we've talked about yesterday would actually be considered by, the leadership of the country and the government. I believe very strongly that in Nigeria today there are so many young individuals who can actually deliver, but they need to be given the right opportunities. And I personally think that the society, the country, the leadership basically needs to provide the enabling environment for youths to thrive. Many of the youths today do not have the capacity or the muscle, financial strength to be able to hold on to leadership position. So I take myself as an example. At the age of 21, when the leadership of the founder of our company left us, it was difficult to basically see how a young individual would take a small company and turn it into a global company. But in the last 10 years, we took a company that was less than 200 employees, and today we're employing over 4,000 people, and we're in over 4 countries. Yeah, thank you very much. And we're in over 4 countries today, and and we're still growing. That was because you know, I had the opportunity. First off, I had the education. I've always believed that the salvation of Nigeria and the salvation of Africa is hinged on 4 basic elements, and that will be leadership, education, technology, and security. So first, we need the right leadership that understands the importance of education and educating the teeming population, the growing youth population of Nigeria. Leadership that also understands the importance of technology in the advancement of our nation, and also understands the importance of security in nation building. But more importantly to your question, Nicole, is leadership that then provides opportunity for young people like ourselves here who are seated down here to basically thrive in leadership positions, especially political leadership positions, where we're able to create policies.
Right, you can see proceedings there at the panel discussion session, the Nigeria Economic Summit, Leadership in 2050, Insights with Nigeria's Emerging Leaders. I mean, on that panel session, you have Honorable Ayemibo, a very young person, Speaker of your State House of Assembly. I mean, Hannah to Mohammed, board member, ICPC, Mr. Chidi Agiri, God is Good Motors, a very young man, inspiring story. I mean, he started running the affairs of the company when his father died at a very young age and transformed the company, over 700 bosses now. Mr. Sami Chodo, Executive Director, Yaga Africa, talking about electioneering and voting. I mean, on the silence of this conversation, it still pretty much segues into what we're talking about. I mean, these people have been able to build institutions in their states. We know how well God is Good Motors is doing. So we're saying, how are states ready
to do it? Now, the ideology of a typical state governor coming to power in Nigeria is not to come and increase revenue. So he is coming in on the strength of the fact that every month there will be allocation. So there is no incentive to think. I'm of the opinion that every Nigerian state in Nigeria is viable. They have everything it takes for them to be able to be independent.
You have some research on this.
Yes.
Can you share that?
Of exporting. I serve in Jigawa State. Jigawa State can be deemed as one of the states that is not viable. But I know Jigawa State is a sesame seed producing state. And we try to analyze the land mass of Jigawa State, taking about 20-30% of the arable land. And if this state can just farm, engage the youth, and we call this export-driven income generation and job creation. So with export, the state governor will engage the youth, put them into cooperative in all the local government, let them farm, give them a guarantee to buy off what they are producing. Now, and then you have an SPV setup where maybe states take 85%, the other party take 15%, who is a trading company. And this trading company get the product, clean it up, bag it for export. And when the proceeds come, they pay off all the farmers. So the farmer give you a credit facility. Maybe if you're taking it from there, you're paying them back in 6 months. But like I said, give them a guarantee. So they know even if you don't pay, they can go to the bank and collect that money. So they have an incentive to go and work. And then you're providing all the seedlings. Don't give them money. Create a microfinance bank that can fund the seedling or the farming input required. At the end of the day, what will happen? The people will have been engaged and they will have produced for the state. The state will export and generate income. This is not a new model. That's what we do with oil. Only that one with the oil giant to do this. We can do the same in agri. We can do the same in solid minerals. So it's because state governor comes in, a state like Ebonyi wanted to do something like this. The only thing they're thinking of is the same thing you talk about, collecting receipts, just collecting. And we analyze it that if this state decides to get in Chinese, partner with them to mine, and they share the proceeds, the state will make more. But the state is interested in collecting 200, 300, 400,000 from every truck that's leaving the state. Of course, what will people do? In the night, they'll move the stuff out of the state and go and load outside the state. So at the end of the day, the state is still losing revenue. So I don't think the state are not viable. I think the state have refused to take advantage of the opportunity they have because they have an option. If they are sinking and everybody is complaining about the state will do something about it. But as long as they have option and they can go to Abuja and queue up every month and get something, they won't think about it.
Definitely, I agree. So looking at the states, every state has to find what it is that makes them run and then try as much as possible to invest back in it. During the live feed from Abuja, we saw Mr. Adebo Ogundoyin, and he said 2 things that stood out to me. He said participation and engagement. And we know that signing this trade agreement is going to help in impact of people, greater opportunities, and giving jobs and all of that. However, my biggest fear is that if that industry is not set up, if we've not done that over the past 20 years or so to make sure that we have a stable environment to make sure these things happen. If our borders are open and trade is free to do, What stops people from leaving Nigeria, which is not functioning? Like Adesuwa had mentioned, you know, power, bad roads, all these things are not incentives for investors to come in. They're actually incentives for them to leave. So how do we stop people, you know, leaving and not, you know, taking them out of the country to then just export back into Nigeria? That gives us the end of the short stick.
We have, yeah, that's right. But we also have another side to the agreement. The agreement allows 90% non-sensitive list.
Okay, we'll allow you to answer that after the quick
break.
Commercial break.
Okay.
You know, we'll take a break very soon. But if you're still following the conversation, we're dipping in and out. We're going to Abuja. We're also coming our National Economic Summit in Abuja. We're also coming back here in Lagos to talk to Bamidele Ayemibo. But we'll be right back.
Before that break, you want to respond, Mr.
Sorry,
Abby?
can you have the question again?
Okay, I was asking about the fact that there are no systems in place to make sure that the things that need to be working are doing that. For example, now I'll give you the situation of where we had rice going on. Exactly.
So I was talking about the fact that the agreement allows 90% sensitive list, non-sensitive list rather, then 10%, which is broken down into 7 and 3%. The 7% is sensitive, 3% is exclusive. Now, if people are going to set up, whatever they're going to produce, if we think it's going to affect our economy, the agreement allows us to, out of the 5,000 plus HS code in international trade, to say, okay, this product will not be allowed in Nigeria. 3%. 7% will be allowed, but there will be stepwise liberalization over 20 years. So over 10 years. So if it's 20% duty today, every year 2% will be reduced from 8 till for the next 10 years. So we have there's a room to create safeguard for the economy. So if that person is trying to produce outside, what is producing, because you might be producing and it's something we need in the economy, that's okay. But if it's something that's going to destroy local economy, we also have a way to ensure that does not destroy the local economy. So what I think MAN should be doing, another private organization, or what do you call them, OPS, organized private sector should be doing, is to work with government to ensure the things that go into this non-sensitive and exclusively are items that will affect them. And then they should be able to defend why they feel government should put it on that list. So I think with that, reasonably, and let's hope that within these 10 years of control of what can come in and what cannot come in, we'll probably be able to get it right. Jury already told you that they're working on power, right?
Yes. The federal government says they're working on power as well. Two questions come to mind here. I'm all about the average Nigerian, the man and the woman down the road in Opalende, a stretch from here in Zamfara, in Ekiti. We talk about these figures, and yes, large continental markets. An average person just wants to switch on the lights and see power, afford 2 square meals at least, have good roads, be able to send their children to school. How does all of this trickle down to that average person in Nigeria? How will the free trade agreement benefit them? And secondly, the Nigerian economy is still largely domiciled in the frontiers of oil and gas. Where do you see the competitive advantage for Nigeria?
Okay. Now, for the first question, trade generally contributes significantly to reduction of poverty. Because if I liberalize, and then there is no barrier again, I have more market outside. That means there's more demand for my product. That means I need to expand. I need to hire more people. I need to produce more. That means I'll be able to trade and get more money in. And then I hire more people to be able to pay them also. So the way it trickles down is the fact that as businesses are growing and expanding, they are hiring more staff, creating more jobs, and then we're able to stepwise reduce poverty. In terms of competitiveness, we're not competitive, no doubt, but like I said, the index already showed that we're not very competitive. But I'm saying, in spite of that, we are still producing enough in Africa, and I strongly believe that with the liberalization and the breaking down of tariff barriers, that will give us an advantage in being able to sell, because we are currently already selling, not just in Africa, in West Africa, in Central Africa, even as far as East Africa. So we're already selling, but now with removing the barriers, it makes it easier for us to sell in those places. What I think MAN must do, LCCI and a number of other private organizations, is keep up the pressure with the government to ensure that the government, because there are promises also of what government plan to do, why they're going ahead to sign, which was why MAN was very much, and NLS were very much against signing in the first place. They also should put up the pressure to ensure that those things the government promised, they're able to do them, so that at the end of the day, it becomes easier for them to also be a bit more competitive. Because as it is today, we'll be concentrating some areas because, I mean, some of these products also are largely raw materials from Nigeria that we're already adding value to and producing to sell to those places. But more importantly also is the fact that even though we have those raw materials, if we do not reduce the cost of production and cost of moving goods, like for example, rail. In analysis I did with one of the organizations that was talking about ACFTA that I went to present to, and I was talking about the fact we're just examining rail in Africa. It's called a rail. If we're going to make it work very well, we must do rail. So if government is able to do their promises on rail, from different parts of the country to Lagos or to all the nearest port, that will help. And I think they're on track on that. Like I said, we're all skeptical. I mean, everybody have come to Nigeria to promise and then they go back. We don't get to see this thing. So let's give them a chance and see. Maybe they will be able to do it. But if they're able to do it, then that will probably help.
Now, I was just wondering, sorry, Rufai, what particular sectors and area do you see the value coming in for Nigeria from if you were to project?
What we're supposed to be looking at?
Yeah, the value. What sectors do you see the value coming in for the country?
Now, we did an analysis of products currently that Africa currently imports from other parts of the world. And we isolated about 90 products across manufacturing, across agriculture, including animal husbandry, livestock.
Wow.
Do you know how much meat, beef? You know, and it was in the middle of Ruga that I was doing this research. I'm serious.
Interesting.
And I was telling myself that, you know, sometimes we have good problem.
Good problem.
A problem that sincerely, if we look at it and turn it around, it's an opportunity. Beef, meat is a big business that Africans are importing from other parts of the world into Africa and from other African countries, beef alone. Even the milk that we are having issue with, and a number of other products, poultry. So we have an advantage already, that product that we are already producing, that what we just need to do is to step up the rate at which we are producing those products. I think government need to be strategic. We can say, okay, these are the list of the items. This is the one we want to start with. And these are the regions we are looking at. So that we're not just doing it, like you said, knee-jerk.
Can't we capitalize agriculture? Can't we capitalize agriculture? Because it's not something that can be transitioned into like a franchise, in different parts of Nigeria. Is this something that can be done?
My take on agriculture is this. I strongly believe that
All right, Bamidele, we'll go to Chima in Abuja.
Our correspondent.
Abuja. Yeah, Chima, hey, how you doing? Can you hear me?
I'm very fine, very fine. Actually, I'm here now at the 25th Nigerian Economic Summit, and right now I want to speak with Mr. Yomi Badijo-Okusonya. Now, he's the Chief Executive Officer of CMC Connect. Mr. Okusonya, how are you doing?
Very well, thank you. Nice to be here.
I just wanted to ask you, first of all, I wanted to ask you, like, generally, what do you think is going to take for Nigeria to achieve this thing, to shift gears, to manage our demography, to have security and sustainable development? What's it going to take for the youth to participate more in governance?
Okay, first and foremost for me is the political will to be able to do what is required. And we've been here over the last 2 days, and we've deliberated on a lot of things. There have been panels. The president himself has spoken, and we seem to know all what the problems are. They're staring at us in the face, or in the faces. They're the same problems that were there 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. And I think the difference is the political will to implement what we need to do. We need to take some very, very hard decisions, tough decisions, to be able to get to where we ought to get to. And I think that is all that is missing in what we've got now.
Now, I'd like to ask you now, because you tell us now, what are these steps we need to take?
Well, first and foremost, we've got to run it like a business. I think right now, governance, if I were to score governance in percentages, I wouldn't score it very high, both at the federal and state government levels, and of course, nothing happening at the local level, local government level. Now, what are those steps that we need to do? We need to bring inclusion. There has to be inclusion first and foremost. We have to manage those resources a lot more efficiently. We've got to, like I said, we've got to look at those things that are holding us back, and we've got to take the bold decisions. It is because we hadn't taken those bold decisions in yesteryears, that's why we found ourselves where we are today. Now, let me take a few things. Perhaps, let me talk about inclusion. How do we make the youth more interested in what is going on? We've got to change, for instance, the way we run our elections. They are costly, they are archaic, and they don't make it, it's not working. All right? Just now we heard that only 35% of registered voters registered. How many of us are even more concerned about the way governance is going? How many of us make those demands on our government? How many of us call them to task? How many of us make them accountable? This morning, the president is presenting another budget proposal at the National Assembly. Who is asking questions about what happened to the last one? So basically, I think that unless we put those building blocks in place, it's not going to happen.
Thank you so much. I had one more last question I wanted to ask you, but I think I'll save it for next time. Thank you.
Good. Thank you.
Righty, so that's about it on the show today. I mean, we've had a great time with the Economic Summit Group and Bamidele Ayemibo. Thank you so much. Bamidele, real quickly, just one word. A lot of people are afraid. Hope this AFCTA will not be like AGOA went for Nigeria.
No.
Okay, good. Yeah, that's a good place to end the show.
Indeed. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Adeso Almoran.
I'm Rafai Husseini.
And I'm Sheto Atigari. Thank you so much for watching. Have a good day.